Netflix's Death Note is a movie no one asked for, and no one wanted to see. It stars people who think they're actors. I watched this movie twice for this video. Sadly, one of those times I was sober. I also roped two of my friends into watching it with me. Sadly, they both committed suicide after the second viewing. Everyone in this movie is a massive moron. For characters written to be so smart, they make an awfully lot of dumb decisions. To be fair to this movie, we're going to judge it on its own merit, so I'm trying to not compare it to the original anime as much as possible, even though it's pretty hard considering this is an adaptation of it. So let's get those issues out of the way right up front. Everyone cast in this movie is awful, except for Willem Dafoe. Nat Wolff, yes, the Nat Wolff that played in the Naked Brothers band, plays Light Yagami, or Light Turner as they like to call him in this movie. They make it very apparent that he is Light Turner, because every time someone refers to him, they refer to him as Light Turner.
Light Turner.
Light Turner.
Light Turner's Light Turner.
Light Turner's.
Or in any scene where his name is written, it's Light Turner in big bold letters to remind you that this isn't that weeaboo shit. This is that hardcore, Oscar-worthy American stuff. This is Mia, Light's girlfriend. She looks uncomfortable in every scene she's in. She has no character traits other than being a cunt. This movie is also visually hideous, barring about 3 scenes where they had some interesting camera angles. Man, for a place on the West Coast, you'd think the rain be really useful for all those forest fires. The first 30 minutes feels like it's made by a pretentious film student. Everything is in Dutch angle. To establish that Light is a genius, they show him complete half of somebody's Chapter 8 algebra quiz for $5. How this person expects to turn it in after taking it outside of the classroom is beyond me. Just like any other poorly made movie that takes place in a high school, teachers are only around when convenient for the plot. Like the fact that there's no gym teachers or coaches around during a football practice, so the main love interest is free to smoke as much as she wants on the field. Light is a bona fide white knight, so the fact that a kid's getting bullied isn't important to him, but as soon as a girl gets shoved by an asshole, he immediately runs over and starts screaming at the top of his lungs. That'll sure make him wet. He then acts like a pretentious know-it-all, calling out all of the bullies' insecurities and flaws like the true white knight that he is, and proceeds to get punched in the face. Like I said earlier, now that it's convenient for the plot, the teacher shows up, but instead of actually caring that a kid is unconscious on the ground, they only care about the papers that fell out of his bag. Hey, wait a second. If all of them were drawn on with pen and they're all ruined like this in the rain, wouldn't all the ink be smeared? To show that Light lives in an unfair society, he is reprimanded for cheating on the tests, and they completely gloss over the fact that he was beaten up. You could really tell if this is a work of fiction by the fact that these teachers don't care that a white boy has been punched in the face. Don't worry though, he only got 2 weeks of detention, instead of being possibly suspended or expelled or what have you. This movie also has no idea how to do transitions, so every time it needs to get from one scene to another, something will walk in front of the camera and wipe to the next one. They also don't really seem to care that he sleeps during his detention. They briefly mention that I'll add a day if he falls asleep, even though he already was, so why didn't they just say, you get another day? After this, the teacher magically disappears because she's no longer needed for the plot. Also for convenience, to set up the fact that Ryuk likes apples, Light has one on his desk. Because instead of writing Ryuk with any discernible character traits in this other than being an asshole who laughs a lot and is barely in the movie actually, they're just going to use something that was in the anime. He then proceeds to read out rules that are only important right now for the plot because the movie expects the people who are watching this to be complete morons. Apparently in Light's high school, the history room and the science room double over. If they wanted to have all this shit fly around for Ryuk's introduction, why not just have it as a science room instead of having presidential pictures and stuff on the wall? Maybe this is because they hired really bad set designers. I don't see how the movie is supposed to have us take this character seriously as our main character and be cool and badass, because that's how they frame him after this. Since the CG for Ryuk is so awful, Ryuk is actually almost never in focus, even when he's the subject of a shot. It's really sad when you have to ignore basic filming techniques to mask how terrible your character looks. At this point, you might as well just put Willem Dafoe in makeup. He almost looks like Ryuk as it is. To further solidify that this is a work of fiction, a white girl is getting bullied outside of school and no one is doing anything about it. Do you think the Death Note has spell check? What would happen if Light spelled decapitation wrong? Now I'm going to play the death scene of the bully alongside a clip from Final Destination, and you have to choose which one is which. If you picked the scene on the right, Then you're wrong, because that's from Final Destination. At some points in the movie I started speculating that maybe this was originally a Final Destination film and they were like, well, no one's gonna see these anymore, so let's slap Death Note on it and give it to Netflix. The kids will love it. Everyone must be so busy with the bully's decapitation that Light was able to just leave this room a fucking mess and no repercussions happened to him. I guess I gotta give the movie some props, and the blood looked okay, and the effect of the kid's head rolling looked fine. It's really unfortunate that they used this one scene to mass market the movie. Every trailer was this specific scene, and that's it. It's almost like this is the only interesting thing to happen in it. To further exemplify that Light comes from a broken home and has a shitty life, he lives right next to a train track. Also, his mother's dead. Somehow, they have UK-based barbecue sauce for dinner. Next, they're gonna show Light eating a Kinder Egg. Hopefully he fucking chokes on it, the little shit. For no conceivable notion, Light decides to share what his book does and all of the powers it has with this random girl. They decide to change the fact that if you touched the book, you'd be able to see Ryuk. This will come into play later, so just keep this in mind.
The fact that Light is the kind of guy who would use Alienware just kind of, you know, makes him entirely unfuckable already.
Not only is Light a white knight, he's also a keyboard crusader, and he demonstrates this to her by whipping out his Alienware laptop.
I really don't like the inconsistent lighting in this scene. It just doesn't feel right. It feels like there's like a bindery between them, or like it's green screened. It's not though, but the color intensities just are too variable.
It actually means light in Russian and Celtic.
Well, wouldn't you be worried that they could just trace it back to you then?
No, could they? It also sort of means killer in Japanese.
Did you know, in Irish, one of the last Celtic languages, Kira, spelled like this, actually translates to dark. It also doesn't translate to light at all in Russian. So good job with that one, guys. You really did it there. This comes off to me that they're really embarrassed to claim that this is of Japanese origin. So they claim this translates into other things as well to mask the fact that it is. God forbid we look like weeaboos. How come no one's wearing gloves here? The only person wearing gloves in this scene is the cameraman, and he's the one who needs to be wearing gloves the least. With L being a genius and all, you think he'd know proper procedure for crime scenes. To show the audience that L is an eccentric weirdo, he eats nothing but candy. He also says he's been awake for over 41 hours. Wait a second, I've seen those glasses before. Enhance! Apparently also in Light School, people still pass notes. You know, instead of using their cell phones like everyone else does. Maybe this is such an old tactic the teacher won't even notice, like the fact that she looks directly at the paper and does nothing about it right here.
But I believe you have something they do not.
What's that?
An in-depth understanding of potential suspects.
Why would I have a better understanding?
The FBI.
L states that Light's alcoholic father is the best person to be working on the case with him. For the first and only time, Max Payne uses his brain and goes, well, why would you choose me over anybody else? But L quickly sweeps this under the rug because he has no reason to base this opinion on.
Was drug-related, but lost in the ensuing crush of Kita activities was the fact that Brody's toxicology had come back clean.
So you're going to base your theory that Kira is in Seattle on the fact that his tox screen came back negative? He held his family up with a machine gun and then saluted in the middle of the street. You don't think, maybe he could have just been crazy. I don't know, he could have just had a mental illness. Nope, this was the work of Kira. I think these scenes are here to build tension, but all I'm getting out of this is that Wolf can't make a single different face because every single scene he looks the same. Luckily, Light has the wind on his side, which informs him that he's being followed, so his disguise is putting on sunglasses.
Light would actually like it if she fucked someone else. He looks like a fucking cuck.
I feel nice guy in real life when we're just shooting on.
Like, you know what? Actually, if you go back and look at the face that he made when she asked that, he got really excited.
Why would they suddenly be looking at these people? They're just walking into a building. There's nothing special about them.
He did. That son of a bitch killed them all.
You?
There's so many rules in that thing. There must be some kind of loophole or something.
This doesn't sound incriminating or suspicious at all. You're just running through the hallways like this. It would actually make sense for people to turn and look at them while they're running through the halls yelling, unlike when the kid and her mother decided to turn and look at the people who were just walking into a building. In Light's infinite wisdom, he discerns that Ryuk is the one behind killing the cops. Even though in every scene we've seen of him, for the few times he's actually in the movie, he seems completely ambivalent and doesn't actually care about using the book at all. He just wants to see how the humans use it. it. He even tells him earlier, if he doesn't want to have anything to do with the book, just leave it somewhere, let someone find it, and then 7 days later you will no longer be the owner. Apparently, there's no red lights going on in Light's head by the fact that Misa wants to kill his father, and then tries to guilt trip him by bringing up his mother in a completely unrelated conversation. You might want to be careful, Elle. If you stay up for multiple days and eat nothing but candy, you're going to end up looking like this. After Light has his argument with Misa, he decides to go to a local cafe, where he reads a book he found with art of Ryuk from the Endo period. Why he has this book and how he found it isn't important to us though, just to show us that Ryuk has been around forever.
I do not kill, Light. I don't even carry a gun. It's distracting.
Now keep this line in mind for later. He states that he doesn't carry a gun and doesn't want to kill anybody. He thinks guns are distracting. They seem to not care anymore that they're also in a crowded cafe. They even had a wide shot showing there's other people there. Yes, let me just spout that I am L, the famous detective, and you're Kira. That's definitely not going to rouse panic or anything.
I'm a fucking cheerleader, Light. Nothing I do has ever mattered.
That line doesn't even make any sense. What does her being a cheerleader mean nothing she's ever done mattered? Is this supposed to be some sort of commentary on the fact that cheerleaders are all about their appearances and nothing else and only people care about is that? Even though she hasn't shown any sort of personality up until now other than wanting to just kill people and being a massive cunt. Maybe if you set her up to have any sort of personality or character traits or motivation up until now, these scenes wouldn't have been just out of complete left field. Remember ladies, if you want to manipulate your limp dick spineless boy toy, just tell him you love him. They fall for that shit every time. He only wrote Watari in the book. Doesn't he have to have his full name? At that point, you've already seen L's face. Just write L. And if that's for some reason not enough, why not just write Watari shoots L and then shoots himself? Ryuk becomes completely flabbergasted because Light actually reads a rule in the book.
Only one name can be removed from the death note by burning it. Get this one wrong, you won't get another chance.
Ryuk tells him that you can only burn one name. This implies that this part of the rule isn't in the book. Well, why wouldn't it be? This seems like important information. Why bother to even have rules to begin with if you're not going to tell them the full effect? Ace Detective Max Payne, along with Bonnie and Clyde, somehow didn't notice that L came into their house until he reached their table. It's good to know the Turner residence is probably the easiest house to rob in all of Seattle. The almighty omnipotent L somehow missed the fact that Miso was sitting in on that whole conversation just in the stairwell after he told her to leave. Also, the police light's only shining through after the fact that L mentions that they're outside. This is so boring.
You really
This looks like a scene for like a terrible horror film. I'm just waiting for the bleh monster stretch face. You know the ones I'm talking about, right?
I didn't enjoy this while I was drunk. What makes you think I would enjoy it sober? Oh look, candy, jelly beans that have survived for countless years.
Yeah.
Don't worry, guys. Those definitely wouldn't have rotted. Like, what?
I'm obsessed with revealing the true identity of... Yes, it's here.
What does it say that it is?
El's true name.
What does it say that it is? What is El's real name?
Sir, answer me! Are you Watari?
I am Watari.
Sorry.
He was just obsessed about revealing L's name 2 seconds ago. Now why is he just suddenly, oh, I don't care anymore because plot convenience so I can get shot and not reveal it to Light. Only now does Light put it all together and somehow didn't notice that she already ripped out one page, even though you can clearly see that they've already written on the page previously. Wouldn't you notice going, huh, there seems to be a tear right here, that's odd. Now she's put Light in the book. Oh no! And unless she becomes the official keeper of it, she's not gonna burn his page. Even though it takes 7 days, Ryuk said. What about that? What happened to that plot point?
Just put the note somewhere, leave it alone for 7 days, and I'll find it a new home.
Because his heart's gonna stop at midnight, so he's just gonna hand her the book? Then she's not technically the official keeper. He could as easily take it back. Since L's actor is terrible, they decided to mute the screaming scene to save him some sort of embarrassment. They can't take the embarrassment of being in this movie away though. What happened to not using guns, L? Also, isn't that Decker's gun from Blade Runner? Light frantically runs to the computer lab where he goes to Reddit to look up pedophiles, to write his super convoluted scheme in the notebook that will later reveal to make no sense at all. Even though L has done nothing but eat candy and not sleep all the time, he suddenly becomes an action hero, jumping over cars and doing flips and shit like this, knocking a random man's face into his soup bowl because L is a fucking asshole. It was also mighty convenient that this construction site was still open, that Light was able to run through it. While the conveniences are running rampant, the deli man that comes out in the back to throw out the garbage just happens to be a Kira worshiper and hits L over the head with a 2x4 going, "Lord Kira, why is Light just running around with the gun in his fucking hand? Holster it, put it in your pocket, put it in your ass. Are you trying to incite more panic? What would have happened if you shooting the box just stopped the Ferris wheel altogether? Then your plan is completely ruined." She fell from the top of the Ferris wheel, but the worst thing that happened to her was getting a nosebleed. Good thing she wasn't like the guy who jumped off the building who exploded into a million giblets, but don't worry, he didn't matter because he was a B character and we didn't have to pan a close-up of him.
James Brody wasn't the first victim. It was Anthony Scoma.
Except Anthony Scoma wasn't the first victim. It was the bully, Kenny whatever. His dad is such a shit detective, fucking hell. Okay, now that Light has completely explained his stupid plan, we're going to break it down why this is awful. So first off, he writes down in the notebook that Mia is going to take the book away from him. But then he told her if he could convince her to not take the book, he would just burn her page. But that doesn't solve anything because you can only burn one name. So at the end, he would still die. Even ignoring the fact that the book has magical powers that are absolute. So if he wrote to tell her to take the book, there's no way he's going to be able to convince her not to. Unless it's going to be another one of those things where they tell the book to do one thing and they start doing it and then they stop doing it and then the book doesn't matter anymore. Kind of like when Watari couldn't stop caring about finding L's name and then suddenly stopped caring so he gets shot without revealing it to Light. And then he has Ryuk use his magic force powers to break the Ferris wheel, where then she falls onto a bed of flowers and magically the page that has his name written in it, she accidentally rips out and then it falls conveniently into a barrel fire that just happens to be at a fair. Then he's going to have a registered sex offender pick up the book on the shore and then use it for the next 2 days and then return it to him after killing himself. But it shows in this scene that he's a sex offender and he's at a playground. You know, if you're a registered sex offender, you're not allowed to be legally near a fucking playground or a school or a park, or you could go to jail. No one thought of that one, did they? While Light is revealing all this to his idiot father, who found out he was Kira because he saw a newspaper clipping of his mother's killer in his room, L breaks into Mia's house, finds her calculus book, which still has the page of the death note, and then it cuts off right as he's about to write Light's name, leaving it open for a second movie, or being a cliffhanger because they decided, well, no one's gonna fucking like this piece of shit and there's no way we're gonna ever make another one of this. By the end of the movie, I definitely figured out why I dislike Ryuk's look in this movie. It is because his face moves too much. It's too articulated. It kind of reminds me of US release Kirby games, where Kirby is made to look more mean and aggressive, but in the original Japanese versions, he's happy. Ryuk in the anime and in the manga, his face doesn't really move a lot. The only thing that really does articulate is his mouth. The rest is pretty much frozen, and I feel like that would have been a lot more effective in making him creepier if they did it like this for the movie, but instead they try to make him seem more villainous and like an asshole. Say we live in a magical world where Death Note just happens to not exist, and this is the first ever piece of Death Note media ever. This movie fails on its own merits. It is nonsensical. All the characters are stupid and unlikable, even though they're built up to be geniuses. The dialogue is awful and cringe-inducing, where lines just come out of nowhere making no sense. Characters change motivations at the drop of a hat, along with seeming to be on the same page with each other even though having no reference to know what's going on. But at the end of the day, if I had to choose between getting a sequel to this or not, I definitely would say I wanted one, just to see the train wreck that comes. Hopefully if they do decide to make a second one, it doesn't just drag on for the middle half of the movie until the last 30 minutes where it completely falls apart.